near Stara Zagora in July of 1978. A married couple was drinking tea at their country house when they saw this hovering object. And another UFO, this UFO, yes, this UFO had been seen near at the Murmansk region, near Finland's border. The same year, this snapshot had been reportedly made by the militia.
Thank you, Sergei. Joining us now is Leonard Nikishin, Science Secretary excuse me, of the Working Group Extraterrestrial Intelligence in the USSR Academy of Sciences. Mr. Nikishin, I understand that you have thousands of reports of UFO sightings in the Soviet Union.
Yes. Most of them were explained later as natural events, but some were mysterious and unexplainable. I feel these are extraterrestrial probes without life as we know it.
You mean unmanned space probes. Was there any official reaction to UFOs from Soviet science?
Recently, most scientists here dismissed them. But now the situation is changing. Several years ago, we formed a UFO group that included many investigators, scientists, cosmonauts, technicians, writers, journalists, and so on. We published an announcement in several Soviet newspapers asking anyone who had had a UFO experience to contact our organization.
Very good.
Personally, I am sure we'll meet extraterrestrial at last, maybe sooner than we think.
Thank you, sir. Sergei Bulontsov, Leonard Nikishin, thank you very much for all you've done so far. Stay with us and we'll get back to you. In the 1950s, America went UFO crazy. Waves of sightings were often followed by waves of hoaxes. Pranksters were busy airbrushing negatives and doing photographic cut and paste jobs. They even tossed saucepans in front of the camera and dangled hubcaps in the air. Obviously, they were just out to get publicity. George Adamski claimed direct contact with blonde-haired aliens who took him to the moon and Venus, where, he said, he took these photographs. Then came the Barker incident at a small airfield in West Virginia, where this film footage was shot. This was termed the Lost Creek Flying Saucer. Many people who saw this film believed that the hanging thing you see was in fact a UFO. We'll leave it to you. The 60s and 70s brought various groups of people who actually built saucer-shaped vehicles and attempted to fly them. And about 10 years ago, there began what we believe to be the most elaborate hoax of all. A Swiss farmer, Billy Meyer, claimed to have had direct contact with an extraterrestrial group from the Pleiades star system. Meyer produced photographs of what he called beam ships. And the occupants of these beam ships. Interestingly, one of the aliens looked very much like a Swiss fashion model, and the so-called beam ship was found in his barn. Now, Billy Meyer's beam ships may have been obvious hoax, but thousands of UFO sightings from all over the world are not so easily explained away. Joining me now from the suburbs of New York City are Robert Pozzuoli, a computer systems executive, and his wife, Lori. I'm glad you could be with us tonight.
Thank you, and nice to be here.
Tell us what happened to you 4 years ago.
Local residents around our town of Brewster, New York, reported seeing UFOs. More than 9,000 reports came in and were always the same. Noiseless, hovering, boomerang-shaped objects approximately 150 feet from wingtip to wingtip. When we spotted it, I had my video camera and we quickly started shooting the footage you'll see.
I think your comments on the tape are especially interesting. Let's look at it now.
Oh, good God.
What do you think?
I don't know.
Not quite.
I'm going to tell you something, honey. I don't know what the hell it is.
Tell me, what kind of effect this sighting has had on your life?
Well, we've become very popular.
Well, that's certainly not bad, is it?
No.
Rosemary Osnato, a commercial graphic artist, lives in New York City's East Village. Rosemary suffered a broken kneecap last year and is recuperating from the injury. Al Hassim lives in the Bronx with his wife and 11-year-old daughter and works the 4 p.m. to midnight shift for the telephone company in Manhattan. In his off hours, Al likes to play guitar and write songs. Lisa Salviano of Lake Hiawatha, New Jersey is 24, married, and pregnant with her first child. She works as a secretary in Morristown, New Jersey. These 3 ordinary individuals, unrelated to one another, share one extraordinary experience. With the guidance of a psychiatrist, Dr. Rima Lebo, they have been able to relive deeply buried memories that will astonish you. Under hypnosis, the subjects are put into a relaxed state in which they can recall these disturbing memories. And once regressed, they relive the experience in real time, often very emotionally, moment by moment. They re-experience what they went through the first time, though it may have taken place months or even years earlier. Please watch as we replay portions of their hypnosis session now.
I could see the lights in the city, and there was this light coming over my head. Very bright, very intense light, very sharp, heavy. It was coming straight down. Kept looking to see what was on the roof. I'm trying to see what it is. I can't see what it is.
What's preventing you from seeing it?
Because it's so bright, I can't look through the brightness to see what it is.
I was woken up. I was sleeping. And I woke up.
Mm-hmm.
There was somebody outside my window.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted me to go out.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know how I would get out there because the window was there.
Mm-hmm.
But when I thought that, all of a sudden I started to move up and out. And I went through the window. And I thought that was so neat.
Can you feel your feet on the floor and walking in a regular way?
No.
Oh.
It doesn't seem like I walk because it seems like I don't see anything like when you walk, you can see like things going up and down when you walk. This is smooth.
When you get to the end of this walk, where are you?
Some kind of control room or something.
Mm-hmm. What makes it look like some kind of control room?
Because of this, it's like a big console in there.
I think there was a table in the room.
Table in the room. Like an eating table?
Mm-mm.
Oh, what kind of table?
Like a doctor's office. Like they make me lie on it.
Lie down on the table? You're lying on your tummy?
At my back.
On your back. When you're lying there, are you alone?
No, they're all over.
They're all over. Does anybody touch you?
I think they do, yeah.
Where do they touch you?
I think like my arms and legs.
Are you alone?
No, they're all over.
How many of them are there around the table?
At least 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm. And are they all doing something, or are they all watching?
No, they're watching too.
Uh-huh. How many of them are actually doing something?
1.
They're so ugly.
What makes them so ugly?
They look mean.
What makes them look mean?
They don't smile.
They don't smile.
God, he's ugly. That is an ugly thing. Very ugly. His head looks so pathetic. His heads, they just don't look right. Their heads don't look right. They look distorted and very sickly.
Mm-hmm.
It's, the skull looks pointed in the front and larger in the back.
He looks like a big insect.
What makes him look like a big insect?
The shape of his head.
Tell me about the shape of his head.
Almost like a football.
Their eyes are very black, and slanted, and sort of wrinkled around the edges, around the eyes, are sort of like lizard eyes in a way.
Big black eyes.
Big black eyes. Did they have pupils?
Whole eyes black.
What color eyes does he have?
They look like they're black.
With us now is the noted psychiatrist Dr. Rima Lebeau and the best-selling author and researcher Bud Hopkins. Dr. Lebeau. Bud is the author of 2 books, Intruders and Missing Time, a documented study of abductions. Thank you both for coming to Washington to see us. Dr. Lebeau, you've done studies of UFO abductees who have been hypnotically regressed. Can you tell us about it?
Psychiatrists are trained to recognize emotional trauma and to treat it, not to evaluate whether aliens exist. Many of these patients are sensitive, sane people who have in common only the belief that they've been abducted, and they're frightened by what happened to them. They don't want fame, money, or publicity, only relief from hidden, painful memories. Now, skeptics question the use of hypnosis. However, careful examination of the material shows its usefulness in these traumatic situations. They also say that abduction reports are the products of overly rich fantasy lives. If that were the case, the report should be as diverse as people's dreams. Instead, we find striking similarities in accounts from all kinds of people, from all walks of life. Post-traumatic stress disorder does not occur unless there has been external trauma, like that some Vietnam vets and assault victims or rape victims experience. But many abductees show the serious and disabling effects of helplessness and violation. With proper treatment, these symptoms can be relieved.
Bud Hopkins, must everyone who claims to have been abducted be hypnotized?
Absolutely not necessarily at all. In about 25% of the cases, there is no memory loss at all. In the other 75%, the loss of memory seems to have happened because their abductors put them in something like a hypnotic trance state.
I see. So a counter trance is helpful to get them to remember the abduction experience. But what makes reports of abduction believable?
Essentially, the commonalities of these accounts, a cluster of similar recollections in cases that I've had from all over the world, all the continents of the world. And I've studied hundreds of cases. People notice a period of missing time, which they cannot explain. There's a lot of fear and terror, sometimes about a remembered place. There are strange lights that they describe in a similar way. The descriptions of the craft's interior, the craft's occupants are described in extraordinarily similar ways. They also describe the medical procedures that occur in very, very much the same way. And the most interesting thing, and the sad thing of all perhaps, is that these abductors are not interested in communicating with our minds, but they're interested in the physical state of our bodies.
Thank you, Bud Hopkins and Dr. Rima Lebeau.
Come. I will show you wonders you have never seen before.
One of the most intriguing UFO stories occurred in July of 1947 in New Mexico. With me now are Bill Moore, co-author of the Roswell Incident, and nuclear physicist Stanton T. Friedman. Both of these gentlemen have done extensive research on this case. Thanks for joining us. Bill, how many people were involved in the New Mexico incident?
We have personal testimonies from about 100 people. One of the most important of these people was Bill Brazel. Brazel's father managed the land where the incident took place. Apparently, a UFO had been caught in a thunder and lightning storm while in the area. The next day, Brazel's father went out on horseback to check for property damage and came upon the wreckage of a strange aircraft which fanned out for nearly half a mile.
The corpses were found a couple of miles from the site of the crash.
Wait, just a moment. Corpses?
Dead alien bodies, called extraterrestrial biological entities, EBEs if you wish. We got reports that they appeared to be small humanoid bodies with large hairless heads, wearing one-piece seamless gray skin-like clothing. We assume they must have ejected from their craft with some kind of ejection capsule.
The Air Force came and recovered the bodies and took them away for autopsies.
Gentlemen, autopsies, EBEs, this is rather unsettling information. Level with us. What do we know to be fact?
We know these are the facts. A very strange spacecraft exploded. Pieces of the craft were recovered. Several bodies were found and removed along with the wreckage. We can prove the story was covered up very quickly at the highest level and given a classification above top secret. Flying saucers are real, period.
The first person sent by the Air Force to investigate the crash site and to take care of the wreckage was a Major Jesse Marcel. Let's meet his son, Dr. Jesse Marcel, who was 12 years old at the time and, needless to say, has never forgotten that incident. Welcome, Dr. Marcel. Nice to see you.
Jesse.
Bill. Jesse. Doctor, tell us, if you will, about the night your dad came home from that crash site.
My father came home with his car loaded with debris after investigating the crash site. He brought the material into the house where he, my mother, and I sorted through the stuff. Among the litter was a foil-like sheathing alloy. It was metallic and it looked like the skin of an aircraft, but it was unlike anything I had ever seen. Also, there was an I-beam about 1 foot to 1.5 feet in length, about 1/2 inch across. The inner surface had hieroglyphic-like symbols on it, like Egyptian symbols, as I recall them.
And what was the Air Force's explanation of all this?
The explanation was that a weather balloon had crashed.
Did your father think it was a weather balloon?
Anything but. I believe the meaning behind his words was that he suspected there might have been some kind of cover-up.
What happened to all this debris you've described?
Well, the debris which had been removed was never seen again.
It was taken from your house?
To Carswell Air Force Base in Fort Worth, Texas.
Now, Dr. Marcel, you've examined the material firsthand. You've had a long time to think about it. What is your assessment of the Roswell incident?
I held the material in my hand. It was not from this earth or this universe, or in this universe. That's what I think. We're not alone.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now, if this story is true, then we have to rethink the government's role in the history of UFOs. The government, in fact, may have had the answer in their hands over 40 years ago. The United States Air Force has played a major role in America's attitude toward unidentified flying objects. Here's another account of how the Air Force dealt with such phenomena. With me is author and filmmaker Robert Emenegger and former security manager and chief of requirements for the audio-visual program at Norton Air Force Base, Paul Schartle. Gentlemen, Mr. Emenegger, how did you get involved with UFOs?
Well, it was in 1973 when I was vice president at Gray Advertising, and I took time out and went to Norton Air Force Base to explore subjects for television specials related to the Defense Department. While discussing several of the subjects, UFOs came up, and Paul here told us about a film of a landing of alien crafts at Holloman Air Force Base about 3 years earlier.
What did you see, Mr. Schartle?
I saw footage of 3 dish-shaped crafts. One of the craft landed and 2 of them went away.
Why did it land?
It appeared to be in trouble because it oscillated all the way down to the ground. However, it did land on 3 pods. A sliding door opened, a ramp was extended, and out came 3 aliens.
What did they look like?
Well, they were human-sized. They had odd gray complexion and a pronounced nose. They wore tight-fitting jumpsuits, thin headdresses that appeared to be communication devices, and in their hands they held a translator, I was told. A Holloman base commander and other Air Force officers went out to meet me.
Mr. Schartle, what did your superior officers tell you?
I was told it was theatrical footage the Air Force has purchased to make a training film.
Well, that sounds plausible, doesn't it?
Well, if it were a theatrical film, why didn't I have a record of this? It was my job to keep accurate records of all audiovisual purchases.
Is there any other reason that you feel this was not a theatrical film?
Yes, it was too real. The people who were shooting that day were Air Force personnel. Lucky for us, the day they were shooting, they were doing an acceleration test.
One of the most compelling sightings in recent years took place in Gulf Breeze, Florida, where over 100 people witnessed a UFO. Hello, Gulf Breeze. What about it, Gulf Breeze? Is there really something going on down there, or is it all an elaborate hoax? Dwayne Cook is editor of the Gulf Breeze Sentinel. Donald Ware is a UFO investigator who claims to know of 153 first-hand witnesses who have seen the object. Jerry Brown is the chief of police in Gulf Breeze. Don, you're an ex-Air Force officer who is firmly convinced something extraterrestrial has been appearing in the skies above Gulf Breeze. What convinced you?
Mike, one couple had 22 encounters, including 18 separate photographic sessions in a 5.5-month period. And many independent witnesses, highly credible, also reported seeing the same objects that were photographed.
All right.
4 people reported seeing the aliens, 6 reported blue beams coming from the UFO, and 10 have reported periods of missing time.
Okay, how about you, Chief Brown? I take it you're not convinced.
No, sir, I'm not. We are have one of the busiest airspaces in the country, and not to say that all these people here are lying, not telling the truth. I firmly believe they are seeing something. because at any time or any place there's different lights, different things that you can see. What I don't believe is the things the local papers and the TV media has put out of a flying saucer with beings from another planet. I just simply don't believe that, Mike.
Okay, Dwayne, I guess you could say that you're the fellow responsible for stirring this up. Your paper has faithfully supported Ed's story, much to the consternation of many of your neighbors.
Well, I guess you could say we have stirred it up, Mike, but I really can't say I'm aware of any too much consternation. Most of Gulf Breeze really believes Ed's photographs and his story, just like they believe the 100+ other witnesses that have seen it, most of which are here tonight.
Now, reporter Mark Curtis in Pensacola has followed the saga of the Gulf Breeze UFO from the very beginning. What were your initial thoughts?
This is the story of the witnesses and the people. Charlie Summerby and his wife Doris saw this object last November. Charlie, if you could tell us what you saw.
Well, it was right after sunset over East Bay. We saw this circular object. It was bluish gray in color and with light shining out through portholes. And the really amazing thing was there was no sound.
Jesse and Alice Bertram, please join us. Jesse is a youngster here. He was playing with a friend last December. Tell us what you saw.
We were climbing a tree and we saw a blackish white object and it was moving. Then it disappeared. We ran behind the Gulf Breeze Elementary School and then we saw it moving again, then it disappeared.
Mrs. Bertram, what did you do? Did you believe these youngsters when they told you this?
No, I didn't. I'm a skeptic anyway, but I had them sit down at different ends of the table and draw what they saw, and the pictures were identical and they matched what were in the newspaper.
One of the most interesting sightings came from Jeff Thompson. Jeff, if you join us and tell us what you saw in the morning during the daylight on November 11th.
It was November 11th at 8:10 in the morning. A UFO came within 400 feet of me at treetop level. I noticed 2 military jets were following it about 2 air miles. The UFO shot up at a 45-degree angle and waited for the jets to approach a little closer, and then in an instant it just shot straight up.
What happened to the jets, and are you sure they're military jets?
Yeah, they're military jets, I believe out of Eglin, because around here we just have the red and white Navy training jets, and they just, the military jets just kind of curved over the bay and went on back towards Eglin.
This may just be the tip of the iceberg. How many people in this room tonight have seen a UFO? Raise your hands, please.
Wow.
There you have it, Washington.
Okay, well, you keep watching Gulf Breeze because you'll find this next thing interesting. Earlier in the show, we met Bill Moore. Joining us now is Jamie Chandere, a television producer and director. Both began regular contacts with government agents regarding UFOs 6 years ago and amassed an enormous quantity of information about the government's UFO program. Welcome, gentlemen. Bill, tell us how you first got involved.
I got a phone call after appearing on a radio show from a man who said, "You're the only person we've heard talk about this subject who seems to know what he's talking about." He convinced me that he was a government intelligence agent and wanted to begin disseminating some information about UFOs to the public.
And the man Bill is referring to is Falcon, whom we've seen in shadow to protect his identity.
That's right. I didn't think that I could handle it all alone. The volume of material I was getting from Falcon was rather mind-boggling, so I got together with Jamie.
And we joined forces in June of 1982, and Falcon told us about MJ-12.
MJ-12 functions as a policy-making group relating to extraterrestrial activities and contacts and UFO activities within the United States. They make the policy, obtain presidential approval, and then field activities implement the policies.
How did you acquire the MJ-12 documents?
Well, they were mailed to me in a plain brown envelope, which contained President Truman's executive order establishing MJ-12 and the briefing document to President-elect Eisenhower, informing him of the 1947 crash in Roswell, New Mexico, and the recovery of alien bodies. Now then, there were follow-up postcards, Ethiopian picture postcards mailed from New Zealand with puzzles and riddles.
Right, the puzzles were clues. For example, for a stylish look, shop Suitland. This led us to the National Repository in Suitland, Maryland, where we discovered the existence of top-secret documents and filed a Freedom of Information request, which led us further to the Cutler-Twining document.
Now, all of our meetings with Falcon were secret.
Now, wait, gentlemen. Riddles, postcards, secret meetings, code words. Didn't you suspect somebody was pulling your leg?
Well, we always looked for a hoax, but within every clue, there was always some verifiable fact.
So you were able to verify MJ-12?
Validating MJ-12 was difficult because we couldn't find any government agency that would admit publicly that they were aware of MJ-12's existence.
Well, so without validating it, how do you get from there to here?
Well, after hundreds of hours of research, we're working with experts trying to validate the documents. But most important, the contacts have grown to include Falcon and 9 other government agents.
Now, why do you believe them?
Well, because we've been able to meet with them, we've been able to check and verify credentials, and it's clear that they are in secret, need-to-know positions. Falcon's position, for example, gives him access to the MJ-12 infrastructure. Why don't we just hear it in his own words?
MJ-12 was a group of people within the government. MJ-12 was created by President Truman in the early 50s. And their job was to investigate, keep track of information pertaining to UFOs. Part of their job was scientific advancements. But their primary purpose was to keep track of the information coming in on UFOs and to analyze the information, both scientifically and in a way that would advance our technology. There are government officials and elected officials that are automatically briefed on the existence of the MJ-12 activities. These officials include the president, the vice president, as elected officials, the director of Central Intelligence, and the director of the National Security Agency. The MJ-12